Hello and welcome to episode 22 of From the Vault. I am, as always, your host, Nathaniel and with me today, on this very auspicious day, the day that we record the episode after we've got the full spoiler, is Mr. Holthauser. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm happy to be again back as the ghost host.
Yeah.
For the podcast. So yeah.
I think that Jaren told us to call you like an actual ghost or something. He had a good name from Twitter, but I've forgotten it now.
It's okay. I'm sure Jaren will forgive us as I continue my responsibilities haunting the podcast.
That's fair. Okay, so today, let's just jump right into it. We're going to talk about cards that we think are interesting from the full spoiler. We both have a list of 10 cards. Not necessarily cards that we think are going to be the best cards from the set, or even necessarily the most impactful, just the ones that we think are the most interesting to talk about. Do you want to start us off, Holt? What's the card you want to talk about today first?
Yeah, I was also going to preface that with, as well, is that we've talked about some cards already, obviously, when the spoilers have been trickling out. I know I tried to think about more sort of decks that these might go in, or strategies they might enable. And also just ones I'm really excited about. Sure. So I'm going to start with the card that I'm probably most excited about, and probably won't see play. This is Tajic Legion's Edge. Tajic's the boy.
I would be convinced it's not going to see play, but carry on.
I mean, I'm going to try and make him see play, for sure. So Tajic is a 3-mana 3/2. It's 1 red-white for a haste mentor guy who prevents all non-combat damage that would be dealt to your other creatures. He also has an activated ability that's red-white. Tajic gets first strike until end of turn. So I think this card's sweet.
The text box just keeps going, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it just does not end.
So upsides for this card. It is not the best on rate, I realize, but having haste and mentor together, I think is really sweet. I know some of the other cards that we've looked at for mentor, and mentor as a mechanic in general, it's been something I've been actually really worried about, am I actually going to get value with this? A lot of times you have to attack, a lot of them are not keyworded with haste, so it's kind of I hope I untap with this thing. Usually that's okay, because you're getting other value off the body or whatever.
The thing is that you have to untap with this thing and something else, right? Yeah. It has to be 2 attacking creatures, this and the thing is mentoring. Mm-hmm. So when it doesn't have haste, that makes your life a lot harder. I would actually, I will wager that I think that there is maybe 3 cards with the word mentor on them that are constructed playable.
Yeah,
off the top of my head.
And I'd say most of them create another body, or you're going to get the value immediately. Tajic is one of those.
Yeah, Tajic is one of the ones that I would say potentially use play. I do think that it's important to think about the fact that if you get the mentor trigger, it's not just a 3/2 haster for 3, which we have seen see play in the past, albeit with an additional ability in the form of Arncrop Crasher. Mm-hmm. This is a 4-power haste creature in that sense. Right?
Yeah, it's giving... Well, it's hasty 3/2, give +1/+1 to another creature. Yeah. And I think any deck this goes in, it's definitely going to mentor something.
Yes, I think that, you're going to be wanting to either have gone 1-drop, double 1-drop on 2, or 1-drop into a 2-drop Goblin Instigator on 2 that creates 2 bodies. That makes it very hard for your opponent to realistically make your board clear by the time you get to turn 3 and you're swinging with Tajic and putting a counter on the thing.
So the other thing I love about Tajic, obviously, there's this kind of weird bit of text that I think is just great, which is prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to other creatures. I think it would be busted if he protected himself as well.
Very definitely.
So good.
Very definitely broken.
I feel I look at that line, I'm in playtesting, they definitely changed it from all creatures to all other creatures, because you couldn't shark Tajic. But the biggest thing I'm excited about for something like a Boros Tokens, or that sort of archetype, is that if Chainwhirler's still good, this is main deckable Chainwhirler insurance.
That's true. It's also, he's basically a selfless spirit against wraths.
Yeah. For, any damage-based wrath, right?
Sure, that's true.
But like Deafening Clarion, there's a couple of other...
There's Fiery Cannonade, I think, is the main one that I would be thinking of. I actually think that there aren't many other damage-based wraths. Those are the wraths that Red has access to off the top of my head. I guess Chain Whirler semi-counts. But him being a Selfless Spirit for those sorts of wraths is interesting.
Yep.
And... I mean, being able to give himself First Strike is also not irrelevant.
Yeah,
it makes him relevant, much more relevant in like creature mirrors where otherwise a 3/2 body might be quite poor. Merfolk Branchwalker, for example, you play it, you draw a land, your opponent casts Tajik, and they look at your Branchwalker and they're like, oh, well, this makes me sad.
Yeah, and the thing that I like about this as well, like, obviously I think this deck wants kind of higher end things like Heroic Reinforcements, or some other cards in the set like Aurelia, which we'll talk about in a second. But having something to spend your mana on that actually is relevant to the thing you want to be doing, which is punching for damage, is like cool. Like, it's just a sick bonus.
I go all over the place on Tajik. I still don't know if he's any good. I think some people overrate the fact that he's a lightning rod. People say, oh, well, the fact that your opponent can't kill your other creatures means that, he's a lightning rod. They have to kill him first. And I'm like, what world are you in that they're not killing him first anyway?
That's
like that. So when is that relevant? Like, when is your opponent going to be like, man, I wish I could shock this goblin token, but they've got this Tajik.
I mean, there's worlds where like, I guess that's true. In the one case of shock, like, this is the best value you're gonna get for your shock.
Yeah.
But what if your opponent's holding on to something like Fight with Fire, and you're a more mid-rangey variant? So you curve Tajik, and then you play like Lyra, and they're like, oh god, I have to spend Fight with Fire on Tajik?
That's true.
Or I have to wait.
Yeah, the only major thing I would have... The only major qualm I would have with that is I personally don't really see Tajik fitting into these more mid-rangey builds.
That's true.
Because he just strikes me as a much more aggressive card, and I really don't want to be... Unless it's post-board, I'm not sure how excited I am to go up to 5-drops that like aren't themselves quite aggressive with him.
Definitely.
But you could be protecting like an Aurelia the War Leader.
Yeah.
No, not Aurelia the War Leader, that's the other one. Aurelia Champion of Justice? Exemplar of Justice.
Ugh, she's the Exemplar.
Yeah. So, I'm talking about more mid-rangey Boros decks. Aurelia, to me, is much more of a good fit for those sorts of things. While she's also a good fit for these aggressive decks, because I think that her being able to come down, immediately, like, give a +2/+0 pump, plus, like, vigilance or trample, like, immediately being able to come down and immediately contribute that to a combat step is, like, quite a big deal. I guess I'll talk about it. I guess I'll describe what Aurelia actually does.
Yeah, let's say she's on your list.
Yeah, she's on my list of cards. I think it's fair to talk about them at the same time. Aurelia is 2 red-whites for a 2/5 angel soldier, I think. She has Mentor and Flying.
Yep.
And at the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gets +2/+0. If it is red, Trample, and if it is white, Vigilance. So, by herself, she can be a 4/5 Trample, Vigilance, Flying Mentor.
Ugh.
Which is a lot of words, but not a lot of words that necessarily excite me in a 4-drop.
I don't know. I think like 4-drop for a 4/5 is a pretty good stat line we've seen in the past. I'm thinking about like Siege Rhino.
So this is what I say is that Siege Rhino was exciting in part for its ETB effect.
Yeah, of course. You got value as soon as it got
like if Aurelia was a vanilla, big air quotes around that, but like a French vanilla, like Flying Mentor, a French vanilla, Flying Mentor, Trample, Vigilance. And the card would be relatively powerful, but would dip in and out. Because there's a lot of worlds where you play that, and your opponent is able to tempo you out with a removal spell, like let's say there's a good black removal spell, or a good green-black removal spell that kills that, and then you're out tempo.
Are you thinking of one in particular?
I don't know, maybe. But they kill that, and you're out tempo, and it hasn't done anything for you, and there's definitely worlds where that cut creature as a vanilla card would not be exciting.
Yeah, of course.
What pushes Aurelia to me is the flexibility to put the +2/+0 buff anywhere.
Yes.
And to put it somewhere the moment she comes into play.
It's kind of like her first attack is almost hasty.
Yeah.
Like she sort of has
2 power of haste and 2 keywords. And then also she pairs really well. So like you talked about Tajik and Lyra, and I don't think those two are a natural pair to me, because Lyra makes me want to be like control the board a bit, play Lyra. Okay, I've stabilized now.
Sure.
Kind of thing. And Lyra is a lot less exciting if my life total is not nearly as relevant as my opponent's. Like, maybe it's exciting if I'm in an aggro mirror match, but if I'm an aggro deck and I'm playing against, like, a control deck, Lyra is really not very exciting to me. If I'm very aggressive and I'm trying to, like, curve Tajik stuff, it just seems like it's going to clunk my curve up a lot.
For sure.
Whereas Aurelia plus Lyra, very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to give Lyra Vigilance and +2/+0, that's very exciting.
Yeah, that locks up most games.
Yeah. Lyra giving Aurelia Lifelink and +1/+1 in addition.
Ooh.
That's crazy. Like, these cards pair very well together, and I think there could definitely be, like, a mid-range shell that plays Aurelia alongside some of the other big angels. You're not necessarily, like, Angel Tribal, really. I don't think I'm that interested in playing a tribe that
You can play Resplendent Angel?
Yeah, I'm not that excited by that, really, personally. But maybe Resplendent Angel's good, but I'm not really into it.
Maybe we're going Naya, and we are also playing, what's her name? The 4-mana 3/4 angel gives you and your other creatures...
Yeah, Shalai.
Shalai.
Yeah, Shalai pairs very well with Lyra, and pairs very well with Aurelia. Especially because, let's say, Seal Away is the best card at dealing with most of these cards. Well, Shalai plays quite well against Seal Away because you get to not attack with the Shalai and attack with your other things that they can't seal away.
Mm-hmm.
And Aurelia plays really well against Seal Away because she gives things Vigilance. So you can give your Shalai +2/+0 in Vigilance, so attack for 5 Vigilance, and effectively everything you control is hexproof for Seal Away.
For sure. I like Aurelia as well. Like, I feel like Aurelia is actually just a really flexible card.
Yeah.
And can play a ton of roles. She can mid-range grind really well, I think. Well, I think she can also be a curve topper for aggro.
Yeah.
That I am actually interested in. She has relevant evasion. She makes your other creatures bigger, both from her trigger at the beginning of combat, so you get some of the haste value, but also just from Mentor.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's, like, a reasonable thing to say, like, I have a 4/5 Mentor. Tajik is now getting bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so...
I do think you're right there. I think that she does have real promise as, like, a curve topper in an aggro deck. Like I say, the fact that she can kind of get in hasty damage pushes us to being more aggressive and making our opponent's life total matter to us. And, yeah, you're talking about this Mentor thing. Here's the interesting thing. You can buff your other mentors to mentor her.
Ooh.
So Tajik can become a 5/2, but who can get First Strike, Vigilance, Trample, Mentor.
Yeah.
They both attack. Tajik mentors onto her. She's now a 3/6.
Wow, that's big as well.
Yeah. Like, 6 toughness is definitely keyword big.
Yeah.
In this format, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I'm not totally convinced in Tajik personally, because I think that 2 toughness on a 3-drop is a big ask.
Yeah.
But it depends on how the format shakes out. If a lot of the aggressive decks are themselves red, I think it becomes very difficult to play 3-mana 3/2s.
I get that.
But if the aggressive decks are green, maybe I'm much more interested in the ability to have access to this kind of Aurelia Tajik over-the-top package that actually allows me to compete after they get down, like, their, what's his name, Galta. And they're like, oh, Galta, I'm on a low life total, but I've got this Galta now. And you're like, okay, that's fine. I'm still going to be able to kill you because I've got this Aurelia.
Mm-hmm.
So I can, like, just hit you in the air.
Yeah, I'm going to put a bunch of pressure flying.
Yeah.
Have fun.
Exactly. So I'm interested in these Boros decks. I think there's really interesting directions you can take them. I think that the mana will be weird and not quite as good as people will think it will be.
Yeah.
So I don't think that you can be like Boros and playing Tajik, for example, and also playing Chain Whirler.
No.
Or Benalish Marshal.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, you want to base in one color, and you're basically kind of, like, splashing for things that are high impact from the other color.
Yeah.
But being based in that one color is probably not going to be enough to be able to run, again, things like Benalish Marshal, things like Chain Whirler. And I think, actually, like, some of the other payoffs that exist, if you want to go wide, like, there might just be better cards. I think the 3-drop slot, and this is my biggest worry with Tajik, actually. I love the card. I do want to test him, but is it going to be better than something like Mentor the Make?
Or the Knight generating enchantment in the room.
Oh, yeah,
is History of Benalia, which Tajik doesn't actually match up that well against immediately, right? If your opponent goes History of Benalia and you go Tajik, you're sort of forced into the defensive role, which most of the time when I'm playing hasty creatures with more power than toughness, I don't want to be doing.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe that's what the activated ability is meant to show.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He can play defense against History of Benalia quite well, but only if you're holding up mana. But he can't play offense against it that well.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they could block with both, and he can't first strike over them.
I mean, but you have your Aurelia, duh. You make him a 5/2.
Whew.
First striker.
5/2 first strike is a big power.
Yeah.
I think that is interesting. And I don't think it's like, oh, your opponent plays Benalia, and suddenly your Tajik is the worst card ever. But I think it's important to bear in mind how your 3-drop's going to match up against the 3-drops that other people are playing.
Yeah.
If other people are going Thrashing Brontodon and Steel Leaf Champion and History Benalia, then Tajik really needs something to push him forward, because a lot of those cards do match up quite well against what he's doing.
So we're kind of talking a lot of like the later plays that this deck might have. We're talking about heroic reinforcements, Aurelia, Tajik going up into other decks as well, like Lyra packages and stuff like that. The second card I wanted to talk about on today's podcast is actually the opposite end of the curve, but I think fits into the same thing. So the card I'm thinking of is called Hasda Marshal. It's white for a 1/1 that basically has Battalion. So when it and 2 other creatures attack, you make a 1/1 white lifelink soldier. And this card is not busted. I don't look at this and go like, oh my god, how does anyone ever beat this? But I think this card might actually be really important for the shows that we're talking about. It's a way of doing the thing you want. It incentivizes you for attacking and makes your board bigger for doing so. And that's going to lead to big turns with heroic reinforcements. And the investment isn't that big, to be honest. It's a 1-drop. The deck needs more 1-drops.
These like white aggressive decks do live and die on their 1-drops.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the cards, I mean, in my opinion, the best cards in a potential red-white aggressive archetype, which, if you had to ask me off the top of my head, are Heroic Reinforcements and Legion's Landing.
Mm-hmm.
They both want you to be very wide.
Yeah.
And there aren't actually that many good go-wide cards in white.
I was so sad they didn't print Raise the Alarm.
I think that Raise the Alarm would probably be a bit good. But...
a bit good.
But either way, like, we don't have a really good Raise the Alarm. We have effectively Dragon Fodder in the Goblin that makes another Goblin.
Goblin and Skater.
Yeah. And that is interesting to these decks, in my opinion. But having a base white way of doing it means that you can also very reliably be casting History Benalia in this deck, alongside your white 1-drops. And having more cards that support you going wide, so this like sort of supports you going wide, and then it makes more bodies, so that even against your opponent's spot removal, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'll remove this other thing, and you're like, that's fine, it still made a 1/1 lifelink token effectively, so sure.
Cool, yeah.
So it means you can keep like getting your payoff for going wide. And this also pays you off for going wide, because attacking with 3 creatures gives you a thing.
Yeah, I feel like I like 1-drops that snowball.
Yeah.
And I feel like at Uncommon, this is probably the best we're going to get, or one of the better we're going to get that's like, this is a 1-drop, if it continues to swing and you don't keep up on board, this is going to get really inconvenient for you.
It's definitely more exciting for me against like spot removal based control decks and mid-range decks than it is against other creature decks.
I agree.
There I might be more interested in something like Hunted Witness.
Yeah. So that's the 1/1 that when it dies makes a 1/1?
Yeah, 1/1 with lifelink.
Ah, right. Okay.
Small upside, but still an upside. At that point, against other creature decks, maybe I'm more interested in this thing that I can more feasibly trade off, and I'm like guaranteed to get another 1/1 out of my 1/1.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm interested in something like Sky Marcher Aspirant, the 1-mana 2/1 that when you get a send, it gets flying.
Yeah. I think I might be interested in playing, that Savannah Lion alongside my Hasda Marshal and my Legion's Landing.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, there's a lot of stuff in white that wants you to go wide, but there's not a lot of cards that heavily support going wide outside of playing a lot of 1-drops and History Benalia, basically. Yeah. So I think that finding ways to support these kind of like go wide cards is quite important and quite powerful. So I do think that Hasda Marshal is like set. That and Hunted Witness to me are both like no one will talk about these too much, but they will both be like strong role players in white decks.
Yeah, like if this deck is good, these are both going to be in it, I think. Yeah. Or one will be in it in some numbers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I want to talk about... I want to move off of red-white. I want to talk about green-white in 2 ways.
Mostly because Boros is better, right? That's the comparison we're trying to make.
No, just because I think that we're staying on the aggressive decks, the white aggressive decks. I think that there is a couple of... So I want to talk about the card Assure Assemble.
Okay.
Assure Assemble is the Selesnya split card. It is hybrid, like green-white, so 2 mana. For an instant, target creature gets indestructible until end of turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Okay.
And the other side is 4 green-white, instant, make 3 2/2s with Vigilance. I think they're knights.
Yeah.
I don't think that matters. In the decks will run it, but maybe. The deck that this sticks out to me as going into is not immediately the Selesnya decks, actually. It's very standard mono-green stompy, the Steel Leaf Champion kind we've seen for ages since the release of Dominaria, the kind that's playing Galta, as effectively A, an interesting reason to be splashing white, and B, a not that bad impersonation of Blossoming Defense.
Yeah, that's true. So it raises the power by 1, and that's permanent, which
Yeah.
is pretty hot, and then you get indestructibility.
Yeah.
So,
Costing 1 more mana is big.
for sure.
Very definitely. But it also gives you this late game option against sweepers, where your opponent goes, haha, like cleansing Nova the board. Everything you have is gone. And in this case, everything you have is gone, because you don't have history, or you don't have Heart of Kieran anymore to have like some things left over at the end after a sweeper.
Yes.
So, in this case, like, you are quite weak to sweepers right now. A, if you're like, oh, well, they're at 6 life, keep my Steel Leaf Champion alive.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's something you can do, or keep my Galter alive with this through a damage-based sweeper, that's great. But maybe they settle you, right? Maybe they settle the wreckage, all your guys, and all your guys are dead. And then in their end step, you get to go, okay, I'll cast Assemble and make 6 power.
It's pretty good.
Like, I think this card is really interesting as a way of giving these aggressive green decks, potentially green-white decks, but I'm thinking of like green splash white, so you can play Steel Leaf Champion, of giving those decks A, use for their extra like Llanowar elves in the late game, and B, like insulation against sweepers, in the form of just being able to go, okay, cool, well now I have a flash threat in my deck now.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of like the ability to make a bunch of power over a lot of different bodies at instant speed should not be underestimated.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a really strong ability, especially a lot of the matchups where this is something you want. You're struggling against control. You know what I mean? Like, they do have sweepers. They have mass removal. They have things that are going to punish you for overcommitting. But this is a great way to punish them for being like, oh, you're going to win the game really slowly?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go.
Yeah.
On your end step, I'll make 6 power.
Exactly. It lets you pressure their mana against counter spells. It lets you punish them for tapping out. I think it's just a very strong card. I also think it plays incredibly well with the new big hexproof dude, who's not on my list, but I think merits a mention here. Nullhide Ferox.
Mm-hmm. So this is the 4 mana 6/6 sort of Frost Titan.
Yeah, so it's hexproof, and you can't cast non-creature spells, and any player can pay 2 mana to make it so it has no text until the end of turn, basically.
Right.
Also, if you discard it from a source an opponent controls, you put it into play instead.
Get wrecked, Liliana.
Well, mainly get wrecked Nicol Bolas in Standard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But, like, I think that card is significantly better than Vinemare in Creature Mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
Where Vinemare was, like, very bad against stuff like Shame Whirler, or when your opponent was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to play creatures that aren't black, and you just played a 5/3.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't remove it, but
fine.
It's just a 5/3.
Yeah.
Whereas this is slightly weaker against control, but it plays so well with Assure Assemble.
Mm-hmm.
Your opponent, like, you know, your opponent has 5 mana, and they're like, pay 2, turn off this thing's hexproof, cast down it, and you're like, okay, assure it. It's indestructible, and it's a 7/7 now. My turn?
That's pretty nuts. So does turning off the hexproof ability...
Turns off the you can't cast non-creature spells ability too.
That's really cool.
In the draft of the green splash white Steel Leaf deck that I have, the only non-creature spell you're playing main deck is Assure Assemble.
Okay. I can dig it.
I think the card is really interesting. I think that Assure Assemble fills in a lot of holes that mono green is losing. I think blossoming defense is a bigger loss than most people would think of it as.
Yes.
I think that a big part of why that deck was so scary, especially against decks that played stuff like Seal Away, which this doesn't help you against, which is important, but I think that it helps in other ways. But especially against like decks that were relying on their removal spells to not die to Steel Leaf Champion. You know, the turn 4 Steel Leaf Champion plus hold up blossoming defense was really scary for those decks, especially because your best way of killing it was sometimes like Vraska's Contempt at that point. And you just couldn't win a game where your Vraska's Contempt got 1 mana countered. Mm-hmm. Especially if you played it in their combat step and they got to also dome you for 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty strong. I know my mind what I'm thinking of in green-white as well, and this kind of leads into another card I want to talk about. And actually, now that you've kind of walked through this card, I kind of feel bad about putting this card on my list.
I don't think you should. If you're going to talk about the card I think you're going to talk about, I think it goes in a different deck and is differently powerful.
Yeah, that's true. But I was going to talk about March of the Multitudes. And talk about making a bunch of power on an end step.
Yeah.
I feel like this card is just like... Okay, Secure the Waste was a pretty good card.
Yeah.
Full stop. I think Secure the Waste was good and a little bit different because you could also play it in something like Control.
Yeah.
But... March of the Multitudes. Man, it's a way to cheat on mana if you're committing to the board and your opponent doesn't punish you. Talk about making an army fast.
Yeah, so it's March of the Multitudes, for anyone who doesn't know, this one got spoiled pretty early, I think.
It did.
I believe it's white, green?
Yeah, I think it's white, green, X.
Yeah, white, green, X for an instant. It has Convoke, and what it does is it makes a 1-1, like it makes X 1-1s with lifelink.
Mm-hmm.
I think this card goes in more decks than you might think.
You know what's the best part, or actually a little bit of an upside that I didn't realize as well? The 1-1s that you make are also these lifelinking soldiers.
Yeah.
So, like, you're making pretty high quality 1-1s.
Yeah, this is like the best fog ever.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially. It's also maybe like a really good fireball. So I think that the comparison to Secure the Wastes is interesting, but doesn't quite fit, because Secure the Waste was really efficient just straight up on rate.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
So this makes better 1-1s, but you have to pay 2 more mana before you even get the first 1-1,
Mm-hmm.
and 4 mana make 1-1-1 with lifelink. Even
Not
at
very
instant
good.
speed, not very good. So you're really looking to abuse either the Convoke element of this,
Mm-hmm.
so maybe you're looking to play like a deck that plays Trostani Discordant.
Yeah.
5 mana, 1/4, makes 2 1/1s with lifelink when it ETBs. All creatures you control get +1/+1. Other creatures you control get +1/+1.
Sure.
And it has Homeward Path text on it for some reason.
And then we also have, like, Emera, which
Yeah.
when she taps, she makes a 1-1.
Yeah.
So that's a way that you make your board wider.
Yeah, so just make the immediate home for this is something like that, where you're looking to make your board very wide, and then in a creature mirror, for example, on your opponent's end step, you tap all your creatures, and you make a million 1-1s, and you untap, and because you have Trostani in play, they're all 2/2s, and you attack, and everyone's dead.
Yeah.
It also allows you to, against, like, especially spot removal-based control, just completely overload them.
I think it's also just... So, it's bad against, like, Settle the Wreckage, right?
Yeah.
It's not the greatest against sweepers or, like, control decks that can really manage your board and your ability to really throw a lot of resources into this card. But I think what it's really good against is, number one, the smart removal based thing, like going wide is just good if they're trying to 1-for-1 you.
Yeah.
But the other thing is just fair matchups, where you might end up spending a lot of time staring at each other.
Yeah.
You know, it's a real good way to break parity, is going, end step, I'll tap these 7 creatures that we've been staring at each other with, and I'm gonna make 7 more creatures.
Yeah.
Or a lot more than that, possibly. 10 more creatures.
Yeah, it's a very good way of breaking parity in creature mirrors. Like, this is probably your best top deck when you're both staring at each other with equivalent boards.
Yeah.
I don't think this fits into control decks in the same way that Secure the Wastes did, because I think the rate is not quite good enough if you're not convoking it.
I agree.
Necessarily. But I do think where this might fit is as a ramp payoff in decks that are otherwise playing this, like, these colours. Maybe it's not even a main deck thing, but something you could, like, side in against aggro decks.
Mm-hmm.
And so you ramp a bit, and then you're like, oh, what do I do with all this mana? Guess I'll make it into 1/1 lifelinkers.
Sure.
And I think this is, like, a very versatile potential bridge/finisher card for decks that are making a lot of mana, and then go, okay, well, what do I want to do with that? Well, I'll play this, and like early in the game, or like, you know, after I've ramped a little bit, I resolve one circuitous route, and I'm at 6 mana, and I can make 3 1/1s, which isn't exciting, but will probably buy me at least a turn or two.
Mm-hmm.
And then on turn 9, I'll make 12 1/1s, and I'll kill my opponent.
I like it. I never really thought about it being able to be used as a ramp payoff, but as you kind of describe it, it does do a lot of jobs, which is sort of like getting you to the long game by making a bunch of blockers and getting a bunch of life, but also potentially being a massive fireball.
Yeah. It's Fireball Helix.
If only it was red-white.
If only. That sounds like a very different... that sounds like a break. But yeah, I think that card is really interesting for the green-white decks of many different stripes, as I said. And I think that I've seen a bit of murmurings about it. And I think that it will be a player... Or at least something people have to bear in mind. I think that people will definitely will definitely die, at least in week 1, to their opponent going, alright, in your end step, tap all my creatures.
Or alternatively, like, attacking with a bunch of creatures, overcommitting to an attack and being like, sick, I'm gonna make 6 blockers for your 6 attackers.
Yeah.
I live this turn and now I'm gonna kill you on the crackback.
Yeah, exactly. I live this turn, gain 6 life, and now I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Like, this card swings races so hard.
So hard.
The other green-white card that I want to talk about is called Conclave Cavalier. And this card is less necessarily exciting. I think it's just like straight grade on rate.
Mm-hmm. This is the double green, double white card, right?
Yeah, it is green, green, white, white for a 4/4 with vigilance. Importantly, I think it's like a centaur knight. The first creature type doesn't matter, but the second creature type does.
It is indeed.
And when it dies, you make 2/2/2 centaur knights with vigilance.
They're actually elf knight creatures.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's actually better, right? Elves actually have a lord in standard.
So they do.
They do, Elvis Clancaller.
Yeah, okay. I'm not sure that fits in this deck. Maybe it does.
Maybe.
So you get a 4/4, and when it dies, you get 4/4 worth of stats.
Yeah. So it's a 4/4 that doesn't do a 4/4. It's basically a 4-mana 8/8.
Oh,
better than like Verdurous Gear Hulk. My god. No, I just think it's good on rate. I just think it does a lot of things that these decks are very interested in. It's sweeper insurance because, you know, you've got this in play and your opponent's like, if I sweep them, they still get 4 power.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. And I think also the way it interacts with History of Benalia is sick.
Like, curving History of Benalia into this is really scary for your opponent.
Yeah.
Especially if they're spot removal based, as I've said. Like, Cast Down is looking awkwarder and awkwarder in the face of so many cards in this format.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like I say, if your opponent goes history into this, and you're like, cast down this, and it's like, okay, you've made more power.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you harder now.
And what? What are they gonna do? Like, get rid of the token?
Yeah.
That's from History of Benalia? It's like...
Yeah, I think that exile removal is suddenly looking a lot better.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty interested in this guy, both as a way of, like, just being a good, like, green-white beatdowny card that insulates you against sweepers, and also just kind of being, like, just good with History of Benalia to a ridiculous degree.
I mean, we're talking about a lot of mid-range fights here, and that makes me more and more interested in Lyra.
Yeah, Lyra is the way of just, like, assuming that there isn't great removal for her, which, unless you're playing green-black, there isn't. But, assuming there isn't great removal for her, then you are very excited by playing Lyra.
Yeah.
Because she just dominates any board she's a part of.
It might be in this format. I do think, actually, that she might just be main deckable. I think I'm at the point where I'm like...
I think it depends on how good the counterspell control decks are.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. And I guess we should spend some time thinking about that as well.
We have talked a lot about aggressive decks, so everything we've said does make Lyra look amazing. All the cards we talked about, like, oh man, none of them beat Lyra. Sounds like because they're all, like, cheap aggro creatures.
Yeah, that's fair.
I just talked about cards. You should talk about cards.
So the next one I had on my list, looking at other combination, was Thief of Sanity.
Ooh, this is an interesting card.
So it's a 1 colorless blue-black for a 2/2 flyer. Whenever it deals combat damage, look at the opponent's top 3 cards and exile 1 face down. Put the other 2 in the bin. As long as that card is exiled, you may look at it, cast it, and you can spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. So, I look at this and I think of Gonti.
So it does... The card invites a lot of comparisons. It makes people think of Nightveil Spectre, which was a very good card in its standard.
Yeah.
Right? It makes people think of Gonti, a card that saw lots of play.
Yeah.
It makes me think of Wind Drake, a card which has never seen play.
Right. Okay.
I don't think this card is bad, but I do think it's interesting in how it's positioned.
I also think, like, man, the body is such a liability.
Yeah.
Like, a 2/2 flyer is not that great for 3 mana. But I feel like if you get in just once, it's really worth it. And if you get in more than once, it just becomes bonkers.
That's definitely true. Alright, so I want to run down the things that make me reticent about this card before I jump into where I think this card can fit.
Okay.
Because I want to leave everyone with a more positive impression. Because I do think it's worth it to highlight where this card's good for secondary.
Mm-hmm.
But being a 2/2 is... like 2 toughness on my 3-drop is something we've already talked about. I think it's a big liability. I think Shivan Fire is going to be like a good removal spell in this format in any mid-range or control red deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Shock is going to be a good card in any of the like aggro red decks. So having 2 toughness 3-drops is like a big liability. Being non-legendary also means that it gets cast down, and having to attack to get value means it also gets seal awayed. So this thing does get killed by every good piece of removal. And I know that dice to removal is not a good argument against cards being good, but it is something to bear in mind if you're putting this in your deck where you're expecting to face a lot of people who are playing a lot of these cards. If you're expecting this to connect, you might be disappointed.
Yeah.
It also doesn't really block very well. 2/2 flyer isn't really matching up against most things. The best you think you can hope to block is like a 1-drop from the white deck, or maybe one of the goblins from Goblin Instigator.
Yeah.
But you're not super excited about this card playing it and like trading with something most of the time.
No.
So all that said, I don't think this card is a main deck card in most scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
I can't foresee that many situations where I'm... Oh yeah, it was one other thing I wanted to mention. Putting cards into your opponent's graveyard is relevant.
Yeah, I did think about that as well. Like, when you have decks that might care about Undergrowth, or might have Jumpstart and stuff like that, like, this can be a real big liability.
Yeah, like, I don't think there will be, but let's say there's a deck that plays Narcomoeba, and you hit them, and you see, like, good removal spell, Narcomoeba, land, and you're like... I really don't want to take the Narcomoeba.
Yeah.
But I really don't want to give them a free 1/1.
Mm-hmm.
And like, even if the comparison there is to the 3-mana guy who can come back from the graveyard whenever you surveil, or the thing that like the thing that domes you for 3 and they gain 3 when it goes into the graveyard. I keep forgetting the names of these cards.
Yeah, that one's a really weird one. The one you can exile from your graveyard?
Yeah.
That's the one you're talking about? Yeah.
Even if those are what we're looking at, or it's an Undergrowth deck and you don't really want to put more creatures in the graveyard, milling your opponent is actually a liability from this card. I think, most of the time. Where I am interested in it is as a kind of like Glintleaf Siphoner role in Control Mirrors.
Yeah.
Post-board. Where everyone's taking out their small ball removal, and you just go, okay, turn 3, Thief of Sanity. Alright, hit you like 3 times.
Yeah.
How do I lose this game?
Yeah.
How do you beat me? I took 3 counterspells out of your deck.
Like, the effect is definitely powerful, and I think it's fair to evaluate it as like, okay, well, it's not just this dies a removal, it's that it dies to pretty much most of the premium removal we're looking at. So almost every single deck is going to have play against it.
Yes.
And even if it doesn't have play against it, it doesn't interact in fair ways in a great way.
Yeah.
It's not great in combat. It's not the best clock. Whatever.
Yeah, you're really playing it to get multiple triggers out of it.
Yeah, and I think that's fair to say, like, this is a sideboard card. This is a role player against those decks where I want to, like, I'm gonna have time.
Yeah, and I want to try and abuse their way of sideboarding against me because... I don't know, my first creature on my curve is Nicol Bolas.
Yeah.
So they don't want to have, like, Cast Down in their deck anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So they get rid of it. And then I'm like, cool, you only have Vraska's Contempts? Play this guy. Your turn. Do you want to Vraska's Contempt it?
Yeah.
I'll resolve a Nicol Bolas.
Have fun.
I think that it's possible that we don't need that sort of card. It's possible that the kind of control decks we see aren't very weak to this sort of card.
Yeah.
Or that Bloodfast is just a better option in these colours.
Yeah, Bloodfast is pretty good.
But I think that if it's going to show up, that would be my immediate first thought. Would be, oh, this is a really good, control Mirror Breaker sideboard card.
I think I've just lost so many times to Gonti, and when I first saw Gonti, I was like, this effect is, pretty meh.
Sure.
It can be okay. But actually, the selection on it's relevant, being able to take good cards from your opponent's deck is relevant, and it played so much better than I thought it would. A lot of what I saw in Gonti was oh, you're gonna get a card that's probably, not good in the strategy you're playing. Because it's in an opponent's deck. And if it was a good card, you would put it in your deck.
Sure.
But that just wasn't the case. It
Yeah.
just gave you a lot of breadth.
Being able to steal counterspells from your control opponent, so in game 1 you got to actually play against their counterspells and
Is
fight them on the
nuts.
stack was
So
really
nuts.
good. Being able to take your opponent's haymakers so that when you got to the late game, suddenly you had...
An extra haymaker.
Yeah. In mid-range battles, it was really, really absurd.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was pretty high on Gonti when he first got spoiled. I was like, man, this is a guaranteed 2-for-1.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe I thought the 2/3 body wouldn't be enough, but obviously there is an important distinction there where this creature has flying and is a Windrake.
Yeah.
And Gonti was a Death Toucher.
Yeah,
Which
where
is-
it really didn't matter how big his body was.
Yeah.
He was just always going to either trade with a removal spell or a creature of your opponent's.
Yeah.
Unless they had literally no creatures for him to trade with.
Mm-hmm. In that case, he's pressuring.
Yeah.
Fine.
I guess they could have a Rekindling Phoenix.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But no, I think Thief of Sanity is a very interesting card, but it doesn't strike me as immediately Night Veil Spectre, I'm going to put this on all my decks. Because we have to bear in mind that Night Veil Spectre, a lot of that card's power was the ability to follow it up with a Master of Waves.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a reasonable on-rate card, but also had 3 pips of devotion.
Yeah, really good synergies, basically, is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Or, it's also just other stuff, being able to slime Desecration Demon afterwards is pretty sick as well. Or having Gary.
Erebos. Yeah, or Grey Merchant of Asphodel.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of things cared about devotion in that format, and so having a triple pip card was quite powerful.
Yeah, so I guess there's a sort of wondering there of okay, how good does the synergies around this card have to be if I'm not going to play it as a very slim sideboard card?
Yeah.
How good do my other threats have to be? How much am I getting rewarded for milling you, maybe,
Yeah.
I guess? Or whatever.
Yeah, we just talked about how the mill isn't particularly exciting against a lot of decks, but in the control mirror, I'm so excited to mill you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'll hit you. Oh, I'll see Teferi, a counterspell, and something else. I'll just put your Teferi in the graveyard, buddy.
Yeah.
I can theoretically run you out of threats.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that'll be the thing you do every time, but...
most of the time I'll probably just take the Teferi, right? But...
Yeah, sure. Sometimes. I don't know, man. I played a lot of real grindy mirrors against blue... Oh, not mirrors, but a real grindy, control-style mirrors against blue-white playing, Gonti decks. And you'd, take that Teferi, and you'd think, haha, I'm so clever. And then they'd, tuck the Teferi back into their deck, and you're like, oh, I thought I didn't have to deal with the Teferi. Or they'll, into the Royal It, whatever the name of that card is.
Oh, yeah.
They'll blink of an eye, and you're like, oh,
that's bad.
This is embarrassing.
Yeah, that's fair. Alright, what's your next card?
Next card I want to talk about is Charnel Troll. Okay?
This is the black-green one?
Yeah, this dude's black-green. So, alright, before I talk about Charnel Troll, I want to talk about another card that I've already mentioned. Its name is Steel Leaf Champion. This card's the best 3-drop going into New Standard.
Mm-hmm.
Week 1 of New Standard, I guarantee you this is the best 3-drop. He just does everything. He kills your opponent. He doesn't get blocked. He's great. Gets played on turn 2 from a Llanowar Elf.
Sure.
Amazing. I'm into it.
Okay.
Charnel Troll is Steel Leaf Champion. But he doesn't cost triple green, he costs black green. He costs 1 black green. He's a 4/4 with trample.
Yeah.
And then some other text.
It's at the beginning of
At the beginning of your upkeep, exile a creature card from your graveyard. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on him. If you don't, sacrifice him. And black green, discard a creature card. Does it have any other text on that?
Yeah, you get a +1/+1 counter for your troubles.
Yes. So it's kind of like Lotless Troll, sort of.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's very reminiscent of Lotless Troll.
But, okay. High-level hypothesis, as I just said, Charnel Troll is just Steel Leaf Champion. He's 5 power when he attacks. He basically doesn't get blocked. He's got trample. Who cares if they chump him? He's just keyword big. Mm-hmm. And he gets way out of control.
Yeah. You do have to enable it.
Yes. The places where he's not... Well, yeah, but you have to enable Steel Leaf Champion, right? You have to play enough forests in your deck so that you can cast it.
I guess that's true.
This guy you have to enable by filling your deck with creatures and ways to put creatures in the graveyard.
Mm-hmm.
But and this is where I want to talk about like the green-black graveyard decks, I think that's what they're going to be doing. And I think that Charnel Troll is your Undergrowth payoff. I don't think that the other Undergrowth cards are that good.
Right, okay.
This is kind of a major take, and I could very well be wrong on this, but I think that the best Undergrowth card that isn't Charnel Troll is somewhere between either Necrotic Wound or Izoni. Izoni is a 6-drop 2/3 that makes a 1/1 for each creature in your graveyard.
Yeah.
I don't think that the enablers exist well enough for Izoni.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just too hard to play a deck where the cards you're playing on turns 1, 2, and 3 are good enough that getting to Izoni matters.
For sure.
And that filling your graveyard is efficient enough. Because I think that Glowspore Shaman is quite a bad card in an Izoni deck. Because a 3/1 isn't actually that good of a body in those sorts of decks. I'd be much more interested in a 1/3, for example, if I'm going to play Izoni, because I'm trying to play this grindy long game.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make the game go for ages. Molder Hulk is also interesting here, but that also pushes you to be like aggressive, because a 6/6, less than a 3/1, but still wants you to be like hitting your opponent hard.
For sure.
But basically, I think that Charnel Troll is the best Undergrowth card, and it doesn't have Undergrowth on it. I think that the curve of like Stitcher's Supplier, which isn't very exciting, but is needed to enable this, into Glowspore Shaman, into Charnel Troll, is quite a frightening one.
Yeah.
Because now I have 9 power I'm attacking with on turn 3.
Yeah, that's pretty aggressive start.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, kind of, you've taken it and looked at this card and thought of it as like a much more aggressive card, where actually I looked at this card and I was like, I wasn't thinking Steel Leaf Champion, I was thinking, is this Goyf? For my big green-black mid-range deck, where I trade a bunch of resources, and then late in the game I'll hold up a removal spell and tap 3 mana and be like, here's a 5/5 with trample, go.
So I think that the reason why I'm less interested there is because I think you still have to be very creature-heavy to enable it.
Okay.
And it's harder to be that in like a traditional like rock deck.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that playing 3-drops that you can't play on turn 3 in my rock deck, like the reason why Tarmogoyf is so good, right, is because you can just play it on turn 2.
For sure.
Whereas this, as you're saying, if I can only play it after I've traded resources, I'm a lot less excited.
Yeah.
I want to put this in like a green-black like graveyard aggro deck. Maybe I'm playing like... Maybe I'm going so far as to play the thing that when you mill it, you like dome them for 3 and gain 3.
Yeah. Creeping Chill?
Yeah, that's the name of the card. Maybe I'm playing Creeping Chill. Maybe I'm not. I kind of don't want to, but maybe I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like... I'm interested in pushing this card to like kill my opponent as fast as possible because it's such a quick clock.
I'm kind of interested in this card as well alongside Molder Hulk because it lets you turn Molder Hulk into value when you don't have enough stuff to enable it. Like you can just be like, oh, this card's going to be too expensive, throw it away, get a 1/1 counter.
Yeah, I do think that the problem with running too many other Undergrowth cards is that Charnel Troll actively like eats them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm kind of iffy about Molder Hulk in this sort of shell.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really done the legwork of sitting down and putting together a list for this kind of green-black aggro style of thing yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this sort of thing in week 1 either, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see Charnel Troll show up as like a very strong, aggressive thing to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just big. It's a big bundle
Yeah,
of
it's just
stats.
keyword big.
And if you get to... Basically, if you can enable this with any sort of reasonable consistency in the first 2 turns of the game, and so you can slam it on 3, I think it's just awesome.
Yeah. I'm not convinced you can play it and Lana Worlds in the same deck, but maybe. Basically, you want to be playing Stitcher Supplier with it. Yeah. And playing 1-drops of competing colours requires a lot of sources.
Mm-hmm.
But I could be wrong on that, and I'd be very excited to play Lana Worlds. The thing in an aggressive green deck, but I'm not sure I'd be excited to play like Charnel Troll off of Lana Worlds because you have to then discard, basically.
I think you're forgetting the actual synergy you want is going Stitcher Supplier, mill the top 3. They're all creatures, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
And then you Mausoleum Secrets and go and grab your troll.
Yeah, sure, okay.
So you get to run 8 trolls.
I'm definitely not into playing Mausoleum Secrets in my fair decks.
Absolutely.
I'm just not... I'm not really into that. But I could be wrong on that one. Demonic Tutor is a powerful card, but I'm not really into that. I kind of want to talk about another green-black card. I think... Not the only other green-black card on my list, but the only other green-black card on my list that isn't a different one.
Okay.
Called Golgari Finebroker, which is
I love this card
the
so much.
uncommon, the XXYY uncommon for green black. So green black black for a creature elf shaman. It's a 3/4. When it ETBs, return a permanent from your graveyard to your hand. I think this card is like nuts good in a green black rock deck.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so fair. It gets you value immediately, and I feel like it does a lot of things you want it to.
Yeah.
And I like that with the printing of things like Deadweight, you can get back
Yeah.
permanents that are
I'm really
removal.
excited to play Deadweight in my Golgari Finebroker deck because against aggressive decks, like a 3/4 that draws you a Deadweight is like pretty reasonable as a 4-drop.
Yep. And then there's also other synergies, like with sagas.
Yeah.
You get like
There's
Phyrexian scriptures back.
Yeah, I mean, there's a specific saga that this is very good with, which is the Eldest Reborn, because it gets back Eldest Reborn, and Eldest Reborn gets back it. So you can just kind of keep replaying Eldest Reborn. And as someone who played a deck that played 4 main deck Eldest Reborn in a previous season of Standard, that card is very specific, and is not always going to be good. People look at it and think it's a very powerful card, and it is. But let's say that March of the Multitudes is the best card in Standard. I'm really embarrassed to be playing Eldest Reborn.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, if I go Eldest Reborn, and my opponent goes, in response, make 11 1/1s. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, okay, sacrifice one of them. And I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I'll die before I get this reanimation trigger.
It doesn't sound great against, like, these go-wide strategies in general.
Not at all.
But that card is never going to be good against one of those. It's not
No.
designed to be.
It is very good in mid-range mirrors, because it 3-for-1s your opponent on a very high quality level.
Mm-hmm.
It makes them sack a creature, and you'll play it at a time when... You'll generally try and be trying to play at a time when they only have 1 or 2 good creatures they would be sacking. It makes them discard a card, and then importantly, it just reanimates a creature or planeswalker, which in these green-black decks can be like Vraska Relic Seeker.
Yeah!
Which is
love Vraska
very
Relic
strong.
Seeker.
Finebreaker also gets back Vraska Relic Seeker.
Yep.
It also gets back Ravenous Chupacabra.
Yep.
Being able to have things that have board impact that you can get back with Finebroker, in addition to just like most of your creatures, or well, all of your creatures.
Mm-hmm.
I think Finebroker, it might not be a 4 of, but if you're looking to grind, this is where you're at.
I mean, with the type of removal that we have access to, and I think the things that this very fair, grindy rock deck wants to do, I think it's pretty closer to just like an E-Witness with a real body that is strong.
Sure.
Like, yeah, like, you can get everything but, like, Assassin's Trophy.
Or Vraska's Contempt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
depending on
or
how
like
you
cast
build
down, those sorts of things. Like, basically, your instant or sorcery-based removal.
Yeah, but I think when you put this card in your deck, you build with that in mind.
Yeah.
And you do run things like Deadweight over Moment of Craving.
Yeah.
And you run more copies of...
Chupacabra compared to Vraska's Contempt, that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think Finebroker is really exciting. Before we talk about the last green-black card, which we may not talk about for a little while, what is the next card you want to talk about?
So I want to go a very different direction now, away from rock and the Golgari good stuff. I want to talk about some hot nonsense.
Okay, I'm into nonsense.
So
Love a good bit of nonsense.
My 4th card that I really wanted to talk about is Beam Splitter Mage.
Okay.
So
I think that there's exactly one reason that you would want to talk about this guy. And it is one word in his type line.
Yes, that's part of it. So it's blue-red for a 2/2, I think human wizard. Some type of wizard.
I think he's a Vidalcan wizard.
Okay, he's a Vidalcan wizard. So, yeah, he's a bear that is a Vidalcan wizard. And he says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only Beam Splitter Mage, if you control one or more other creatures that spell could target, choose one of those creatures. Copy that spell. The copy targets the chosen creature. Basically, if you pump Beam Splitter, you pump in one of your other creatures.
And if you bolt Beam Splitter, you bolt one of your other creatures.
It is important to note it's only when you cast an instant or sorcery, so opponent doesn't get to 2 for 1 you.
That's true. That is definitely good. And obviously you're not actually going to be bolting things, or bolting your own Beam Splitter Mage.
So the reason I'm interested in this card is something to do with its type line, and that's wizards.
Yes.
We have some payoffs. We've had decks before that were kind of tier 2 in standard, or maybe a little bit lower, fringe playable. Decks that were aggressive decks built around like Adelies. You had cool stuff like Storm Chaser Mage, etc. Your G2 Lava Runners.
I mean, the biggest, the best card in those decks was Adelies. And Soulscar Mage is the biggest loss.
Yeah. But I will say that... So you get certain things that are good that are payoffs for wizards. You get to play Bolt.
Yeah.
In the form of Wizard's Lightning. And you get to play Counterspell. If you want that sort of effect, you might play it as one or two of. But I think this card, actually... I'm not saying it's going to be great. But I think what it does, it gives the deck a different angle that it can use to push a lot of damage really quickly.
Yeah.
And that's by saying, like, okay, I'm going to give +2/+2 to Beam Splitter Mage. Oh, my other creature got +2/+2 now. It reminds me a lot of a deck that was sort of similar back when Storm Chaser Mage first became a thing, and this was when Oath of the Gatewatch was out, where there's this really hyper-aggressive deck where you were playing, like, Swift Spear... Storm Chaser Mage, whatever, and you just played a bunch of, like, things that targeted creatures and cantripped.
Yeah.
And you're just like, cool, cycle, and get a bunch of pumps and do that. And I feel like this card has an opportunity for you to be able to play a similar game, because if you do get the payoff from it, it's kind of a weird cantripping on its own.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, I think this is just a really powerful effect, and I'm surprised it's so cheap, or it can be as the potential, if you have cards that draw cards that target. I think there's ones that gives a creature trample and draw
So importantly, there are no cards that target creatures individually and draw a card.
Oh.
There is cards that give all creatures you control trample and draw a card, and there's a card that gives all creatures you control first strike and draw a card, but those do not target. There is Sure Strike in Guilds of Ravnica, which is an interesting thing to do with this, like turning Sure Strike into like a +6 attack and first strike thing, lets you win a lot of combats.
For sure.
Like, that's a good way of beating Steel Leaf Champion. And it also lets you kill a lot of people out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So this card is interesting to me in that way. The card that would be interesting to me in Wizards, actually, in addition to this, is We Dragonauts.
Yeah, I was going to mention them as well, and I think, like, these guys make a good team.
Yeah.
Where, I like... So there's a level where I think it's pretty sick to be able to be like, We Dragonauts, I can pump my other dude. They get pumped, but also what if they got the same trick on them? It's like, that's just like so much damage to push.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much I want to play We Dragonauts. 3 mana is a lot for a 1/3, and I need all the other pumps, but these go in the same deck.
Yeah.
Their synergies are strong together, and
they're both wizards to enable your Wizard's Lightning and your Adelies. Mm-hmm. Like I said, Adelies is the real reason to be wizards. I don't think that a wizards deck is looking to play the counterspell that relies on wizards.
Yeah.
Because you're a prowess deck. You generally want to be spending your mana on your turn, on your terms. Mm-hmm. Because you want to be getting prowess pumps and killing your opponent.
Yeah.
So playing like conditional counterspells main deck, especially expensive ones, and 2 mana counts as expensive in this case, is kind of awkward. Mm-hmm. Also, it's a sort of deck that will frequently want to go like G2 Lava Runner, Wizard's Lightning in the same turn.
Yeah.
So double red is already something you're thinking about.
For sure.
And adding double blue into that makes your life a bit harder.
For sure.
I am interested in Wizards. I think it's a very explosive deck that has the potential to kill people really quickly. And if you don't kill their stuff, you will just die.
Yeah,
But
okay.
My enthusiasm is tempered by the fact that we lose Soulscar Mage, and there is no good replacement 1-drop wizard.
That is a really good point. And I think this is a card I'm looking at not to play now.
Yeah.
But I just want to keep my eyes on this. Because the second we get something like... we also saw it similar in the Blue-White Heroic deck.
Yeah.
Way back in the time, like having Defiant Strike. Where you got to give a creature +1/+0 and draw a card. Yeah, imagine doing that twice. This is something that synergizes with the same effects and can make something really powerful, really explosive.
If they printed like a pump spell in Gruul that cantripped next set, like a red one, I'm very interested in this card then.
And I
potentially, if in the set after that, whatever the third like Ravnica set is called, they print like a cool Is It 1-drop wizard, I'm very interested. We have some 1-drop wizards. They just don't quite synergize in the strategy as well. I think the best one is Siren Storm Tamer.
Yes.
But like I've said, I think that blue 1-drops are slightly harder in the deck than red 1-drops, because you only play more mountains than you do islands.
Yeah.
And it does protect your other stuff from from removal spells, but it kind of... I mean, I've already said that, like, counter spells aren't necessarily amazing. This, I guess, is cheap, but I just don't think it's of the same quality as Soulscar Mage. It doesn't have the same kind of, like, stacking ability and the ability to, like, become a big, powerful clock that Soulscar Mage did.
Yeah.
So, while it's possible that we see Wizards decks, I'm not super excited about them now.
I'm on the same wavelength as you. I'm not thinking that this is going to bust the format wide open. I just saw the text on this, and I'm like, the last time I saw a text like this that was sort of abusable was, like, Zata.
Yeah.
And Zata was, like, 2 mana more, and still sometimes people tried to bust that in half.
Yeah,
like,
that card showed up sometimes. It wasn't very good, but...
But if you're saying, like, oh, you can do the same thing for 2 mana, in a lot of cases it's going to be pretty close to just as relevant, I'm like, huh.
Yeah, you don't need to copy targeting every creature you control if just targeting an additional one will get there.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to keep my eyes on it.
Okay. I want to... Okay, so there's 2 cards I really want to talk about now. And I want to kind of lead with one of them and go into the other.
Okay.
And the first one I want to talk about is Assassin's Trophy. And obviously everyone's talking about Assassin's Trophy. It kills anything except Rekindling Phoenix. It's a good point. And a big point in favour of Rekindling Phoenix being like a very good card, assuming you can play like a red deck that can fit it in. But I want to talk about what, like, the downside that it has, which is, like, ramping your opponent, and, like, potentially fixing their mana. What that will do to a format if this is a very heavily played removal spell. And I also want to talk a bit about what it being gold does in the current format. And I'll get onto that a bit when I talk about the other cards I want to talk about.
Okay.
So, when your opponent's removal spell is ramping you and fixing your colours, it encourages people to be slightly greedier in terms of their, like, mana base.
Sure.
And maybe cheat on sources a little bit more because they're like, well, I'll play my 3-drop and then my opponent will, like, kill it with an Assassin's Trophy and I'll get to play my 5-drop. And it won't matter if I've drawn my second, like, white source for that 5-drop because...
I'll go and fetch it.
I'll go and find my planes. It also massively encourages people to have, like, at least one of each basic of the colours they're in their deck because... It just allows you to be in the situations where you can colour fix yourself should you be in a position where you don't have access to one of your colours.
Okay.
And it also pushes people to play stuff that is slightly up the curve from where they might be. Because one of the best ways to punish your opponent for, like, killing your best thing and ramping you is by playing something way, like, ahead of curve that they didn't expect you to be able to play.
Yeah, something that's going to utilise that mana well.
So, something like Aurelia becomes much more interesting to me in my aggro decks that would normally stop at 3... because having a 4-drop in my deck that lets me use my mana, or having a mana sink, something like Shalai, becomes a lot more interesting in a world where everyone's trophying everybody.
Yeah.
Because, hey, you gave me a land, and it's my 8th land. But that actually matters, because it lets me play a 2-drop and activate Shalai this turn. So having access to mana sinks is something that I think is going to be, like, not tantamount importance, but something of relative importance.
Yeah, and I think it also becomes really relevant when you think about the split cards.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the green-white split cards that you can make 3 2/2s, or you can make your dude indestructible.
Yeah.
The backside is live a lot more often if Assassin's Trophy is a big part of this format.
Exactly.
And same with some of the other effects. I know I've had a couple conversations with you and with other people, and I think for the most part, everyone's like, I don't think it's very good. And I'm like, I actually think it's worth a try. And that's the Boros split card as well. The one where you can do a really big Gideon's approach as the front side. It deals 5 to attacking or blocking creature. And then the back side is like, have another combat step after this and your creatures get vigilance.
Yeah.
Where like, okay, 5 mana is a lot in aggro deck. But this is a really good way to punish if someone's giving me extra lands.
Yeah.
This can make it so I actually do have turns where I can close the door more quickly against my opponent that fetches me something else.
Yeah. So I do think that bearing that in mind in your... Like, Nicol Bolas is another good example of a cool mana sink to have access to, which is just a good card on its own that you'll put in your deck, and then, my opponent keeps ramping me. I guess I'll play and flip Nicol Bolas.
Hard to punish.
I think that's something to bear in mind. I'm not necessarily convinced that Assassin's Trophy is going to be like a 4 of on every standard green-black list.
For sure.
But I want to talk about... So, before I get into the other part of Assassin's Trophy, I want to talk about the other cards I wanted to talk about, which are guaranteed to be the most impactful cards from Guilds of Ravnica, which is Shocklands.
Yeah, Shocklands.
These are guaranteed to be, like, the biggest change... The biggest, like, definers of how the format plays out.
Sure.
And the important point here, basically, is that your opponents will all have a little bit less life, and you will have a little bit less life, because you'll be paying life to make sure your mana comes in untapped.
Yeah.
Everyone's mana will be a little bit better, and 4 colors becomes, like, maybe easier in some cases than 3.
I feel like last time we talked, you're like, 3 colors is easier than 2.
Yeah.
And now you're like, 4 colors is easier than 3.
So Shocklands plus Checklands, people were like, oh, it makes for a really good mana base, right? And that's true, but what it doesn't do is let you, like, cheat on your double pips.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't let you play, like, Chain Whirler and a bunch of white cards in your deck, actually. Because it's not that much better than Canyon Slough for doing that.
Right.
But what it is quite good at is putting a lot of untapped lands in your deck that make a lot of different colors.
So you're saying it's good for going wide as far as your mana base is concerned, rather than being able to cast Banalish Marshal or Chain Whirler.
It's really good for being able to splash a lot of different cards.
Okay.
So I have a sketch build of a deck that plays Nicol Bolas the Ravager and Vraska Relic Seeker and Assassin's Trophy. It has 14 blue sources, 14 black sources, 10 red sources, and 10 green sources. And, like, the vast majority of them come in untapped.
How many gates are you running?
None.
None. No.
Zero go
Okay.
gates. You are running something like 12 Shocklands, and then something like, I think it's like something close to 10 Checklands.
Okay.
And 8 of your Checklands come in untapped from all of your Shocklands.
And it's like 2 basics or something like that.
4 basics.
Okay.
1 of each color.
Yeah. Okay. For your Assassin's Trophy.
Yeah. I think that this is doable. I don't think that this specific deck looks particularly good against, like, very wide decks, because you're playing a lot of spot removal and you don't have access to very many of the good sweepers, because a lot of them are double pips.
Yeah.
And giving up access to double pips is a big thing, but it sounds like a mid-range killer, because you get to go, like, removal spell / cantrip for the first few turns into Nicol Bolas, Ral Zarek, Vraska Relic Seeker, and just completely bury your opponent under mid-range hammers.
That sounds, like, pretty scary, to be honest.
Yeah. I think that this deck's mana is totally playable, based on, like, actual mathematics.
Okay.
And as a result, I'm kind of interested in exploring what 4-color combinations you can play. You cannot play double pip cards in your 4-color deck.
I mean...
That is impossible. But you can play a lot of different single pip cards.
This makes me think a lot about, was it Dragons or Con Standard? Where basically by the end of it, once we had access to fetches...
That was BFC Standard, I think.
Was it?
Where everyone was 4 colors.
Yeah, exactly. Where we ended up with a bunch of 4-color nonsense. And the main reason for that is just like, you got so many strong effects.
Yeah.
You got...
There were a bunch of strong gold cards, like this standard.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a bunch of, like... I mean, so in that, because of the way fetches and the duels lined up, it was actually easier to splash a 4th color sometimes, because you wanted your fetch to be able to get all of your colors.
Yeah.
And there were, like a Flooded Strand and Abzan couldn't get black unless you also played, like, a Sunken Hollow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that Shocklands... And this is the thing where, like, Assassin's Trophy being the best removal spell in the format, theoretically, being a gold card, pushes people to do things like this. When the best removal spell in the format is Vraska's Contempt, and it might still be, but if the best removal spell in the format is a double pip card, it makes you want to be, like, able to cast it. So it makes you want to be, like, base in that color, or close to base in that color. It makes you want to not be too greedy with your mana. It makes you want to be like, okay, I'm just 2 colors, and I can do double of one color into double of the other, and that's fine. When it's a gold card, it makes you want to splash it.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It makes you go, like,
well, it's so much easier to get, like, 2 different colors than it is 2 of the same color. And that's...
in a multicolor deck, that's true.
Okay.
It's actually not... It's not harder because, like, you know what's really easy? A mana base of 20 mountains.
Yeah.
That can cast Eidolon the Great Rebel on turn 2 every time.
For sure. But we're saying in a deck that wants access to more than one color, which standard, that is typically the case.
Yes.
You're not going to find enough powerful stuff in a single color, typically. Unless we're talking about stuff like the green deck.
Yeah.
But even then, we're looking at...
The green deck can play Assassin's Trophy, by the way. You can play a green-black splash variant that can't cast Assassin's Trophy until about turn 5 consistently, but I think that's okay for the green deck, because the things you're killing with Assassin's Trophy most of the time are stuff like Lyra that you're wanting to kill on turn 5 anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, but that's my point, though, is, we already have a pretty good green shell.
Yeah.
But, obviously, you want to get it as good as you can get, and you'll look to other colors to try and make that happen. And the way that these lands interact with basically gold cards, and being able to say, it is easier to get breadth in your colors rather than
depth in your colors.
Exactly.
It's easier to cast, Assassin's Trophy and Nicol Bolas than it is to cast, Assassin's Trophy and... Well, not Assassin's Trophy, but, than Assassin's Trophy
and Tajik.
Yeah, Chainwhirler and Tajik. Exactly. So, when the best removal spell is a gold card, it incentivizes you to be more multicolor and to be less focused in any one of your single colors.
Mm-hmm.
That is about all I think we want to talk about today.
Okay.
Personally. Unless you have anything really burning that you wanted to bring up. I think that...
I just wanted to give a couple of honorable mentions.
Let's give a few quick hits.
So, one of the big ones, kind of after talking about wizards, was Crackling Drake.
Yeah.
I think having 4 more copies of Enigma Drake in the format could be a big deal.
Yeah. Redundancy of effects is really interesting. Adding a cantrip onto a card that already existed that we kind of know is almost there is very interesting. The only major worries I have about Crackling Drake are the way it matches up against Nicol Bolas the Ravager, and the way that it matches up against Rekindling Phoenix.
That's true.
Both of those cards are direct options you could also be playing in your 4-drop flyer spot.
And it's really hard. You basically have to counter those cards.
Yeah.
I think otherwise, no matter what, they're going to get value out of you, or they're going to be just an impossible roadblock.
Yeah. And a lot of them, they die to different kinds of removal, and they ask different things of your opponent, and they do different things. So it's not necessarily that I'm oh, well, these cards exist, so why would you ever play Crackling Drake? It's more of I have to have a reason to be wanting to play Crackling Drake or wanting to play one of these other cards. And unfortunately, Crackling Drake also matches up really badly against Rekindling Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you draw a card, but your 4-drop is just completely stonewalled by theirs.
The other card that I was thinking of, and to be honest, I look at it and I just go, I'm interested, but I don't know how to build the deck. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know if there's enough support. But Dimir Spybug.
Sure.
I mean, it's a 2-mana 1/1 with relevant evasive keywords.
Flying and Menace, basically unblockable.
Yep, and it grows bigger every time you surveil.
Yeah.
And I'm okay, it's not 1 mana for a 1/1 that gets really big, a la Delver.
Sure.
But in the right show, this could be pretty similar. It's a low investment for what could be a ton of damage later on.
Yeah.
When we talk about problem cards like Rekindling Phoenix, it's well, I don't care. Do you have 2?
Do you have 2? Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because I'm going to keep on swinging.
Spybug is quite similar to the card Thoughtbound Phantasm, both of which I'm kind of interested in. Thoughtbound Phantasm is blue for a 2/2 defender. Whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Mm-hmm. If it has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it can attack.
Okay.
That card is pretty interesting to me in a similar way to Delver or Gurmag Angler, where it's a low resource investment, and then later on in the game, you wake up with a 5/5.
Yeah.
Gurmag Angler you can't cast on turn 1, but you can cast it for 1 mana on turn 3, and then suddenly you have a 5/5.
Sure.
This guy isn't Gurmag Angler, but he kind of has a similar role, where, like I say, you go him into Lazav the Multifarious, into Notion Rain, into the counterspell that surveils, and sick, I have a 5/5.
Yeah.
Hit you?
What I like is that for very little investment, it rewards you for playing the game of Magic.
Yeah. I think both of them are interesting for that reason.
And I'm into that.
Yeah.
That's something I'm cool with. And I don't think the constraint is massive. It's just more about okay, basically I want to test it to see how consistently I'm getting there. And also, part of it is, if this is really good and it's ID'd as an extremely good threat in the format, it's going to die a lot more often before you get your value out of it. People are just going to be actually, I'm just going to snap off this cast down now, kill it. I don't want to mess around with it. Whereas...
my only major concern about these 2 cards, the Surveil Synergy cards, are I'm always a little bit reticent when I'm effectively building a block constructed deck for Standard.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
And that is kind of what they're asking you to do. So I'm less into the all-in, like, turbo surveil, I'm going to make a really big creature really fast versions. And I'm kind of into the idea of just playing this in a control deck that happens to play some of the good surveil cards.
Yeah.
And it will eventually be a 5/5 and you'll kill your opponent. And it's just kind of like an angle you have.
I was also thinking, like, I don't know, it might be possible there's a mid-range shell or something like that that could use it, but I was looking at the guild mages, a lot of them seem inefficient. I think the Dimir one's the only one I'm interested in, and it says surveil on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
is that the one? What is its other ability?
It's like, keep something tapped.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's the Is It one that draws a card.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that... I don't think any of the guild mages are really going to break through into standard.
I don't think so
If any
either.
of them do, it probably will be the Dimir guild mage,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. But yeah, I'm really excited for new standards.
Me
I think
too!
There's a ton of stuff to do. I think the fact that I have sketches for basically monocolor decks and sketches for 4-color decks and everything in between.
I think it's a good sign.
Yeah, that makes me really excited for how things are going to shake out and what the best thing to be doing is. When you have such strong incentives to be basically monocolor and such strong ability to be multicolor, I think that you have a bunch of different strategies that are enabled.
I'm really hyped for week 1.
Yeah, me too.
So hyped.
Yeah. And if you guys are hyped for week 1, you can get your singles from murphysvault.com.
And obviously, there's going to be tons of events soon. Pre-release is coming up.
Yeah.
I'm excited for it.
I've already booked my tickets.
I can't even go.
Oh,
I'm really sad.
that
But
is sad.
I'm still excited to hear everyone's stories about it. And
Yeah.
get it.
You get to pick a guild that you want to, like... And I'm having a really hard time, like, betraying the people who I would... Like, I kind of like playing the most in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And probably picking Selesnya because they look like the strongest.
Don't be lame. Pick Boros. They're the best.
Boros is okay, but I never want to be Boros in Sealed.
Why not?
Because I never want to be aggressive in Sealed. I
Whatever.
want to, like, slowly grind my opponent out until I eventually have, like, a 2/2 and they have nothing.
That's the best feeling in Limited of just punking people with extremely aggressive decks. And they're like, oh, I thought this was about value. And then
No.
you're just like, no,
You have to grind them until they're dead.
I don't think we're going to see eye to eye on this one.
Maybe not. Maybe we fundamentally disagree. And we'll have to just agree on that. I think, yeah, if you're ever in Edinburgh, please check out our sponsor, Murphy's Vault. Please go on their website, check out the articles and the events that they run. Check out the YouTube channel, has plenty of good stuff on it. I think we talked about some more interesting stuff we're going to be putting on, like summaries of what events are coming up in the store over the next week/month. A lot of really interesting, exciting stuff going on there that I would keep an eye out for.
And
maybe, yeah.
I was going to say as well, if you like the podcast, if you like listening to us, make sure you subscribe to us. We're on iTunes now.
Yeah, we're on iTunes. You can leave us a review and tell us how amazing we are, /not amazing.
And how great Boros cards are.
/not great.
How terrible Nathaniel's opinions are. That's okay.
Yeah, we really welcome all feedback. We really just like to hear from listeners. That'd be really great.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, I think that's all we have to say to this week. We've been From the Vault, and you've been fantastic.